Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Any Yugoslavian, Bulgarian, Romanian or Greek friends here with some stories? Reposting as requested. One more, this story was told to me by another friend's grandmother. The elderly always have amazing stories. It's a bit of a long read, but here it is. She was young and unmarried, although they had no children yet. One day, two other friends of hers took her for a ride into some village. They went to see an old man that claimed he could see the future. Nobody really believed that, but just like most young people, they were looking for a thrill, a ghost hunt, paranormal hoodoo-voodoo stuff. They reached his home and he came out of his house to greet them. First thing he said was to one of the friends, "You leave your bag hanging on the gate. I cannot permit such things in my home. Nobody will touch your belongings, because nobody takes things from this place." They did not understand. She began to rummage through the bag only to find a small bag of incense, the type you get from your local church. She put it back, hung the bag and followed the man into the house. They went in turns. Friend's grandmother was the last. The other two came out sort of shaken, so she grew hesitant when her turn came. Her skepticism prevailed. She decided it had been all a show and a lucky guess. She went and they began to talk. "You don't believe in my powers," he said, "but worry not, I'll prove it." "Do you know how I know things?" he asked. "I have a son," he said, "that boy over there." He pointed to an absent-looking fellow in a corner. "He's a half-wit," he said, "a drooling idiot it would seem." "Boy," he yelled, "go ask her mother how she's doing." He closed his eyes as she grew even more uncomfortable. Her mother had been dead for 2 years. She tried to pray silently. The man turned red with anger and forbade her from uttering the name of God. He then began to laugh. "The boy is back," he said. The kid had not budged from his corner. "He brings interesting news. Your mother is well. She is indeed in a better place with greener grass, although she lies some 6 feet under it. She's quite concerned for you though. You're up against some nasty things with that husband of yours." "Nonsense," yelled the woman. "Your husband, he's cursed, you know. Some damn wench that hates your guts and wants revenge." "Oh, I see her now. He's in great danger, but I might be able to help. I don't even want anything in return. Don't think I'm trying to fool you. It's an awful type of curse. It's not forged by fire, nor by water, no. Those can be easily undone. This one here is buried at the feet of a dead man, in the soil of a grave. It's almost impossible to break if you can't find where it is buried. I can help. I can send the boy and he can ask around. The dead will tell him. It will take time though. You must come here in 3 months. You're up against an awful thing here and your husband is in mortal danger." She looked towards the half-wit in the corner. She just asked, "What happened to him?" "The boy, I sold him," the old man said. "My soul along with him. I sold them for the gift." "To whom?" she muttered. "Take a guess." "I sold him while he was still in the womb. His mother died at birth. He is nothing but a vessel now. He's not my son died too that day." "You're a monster," cried the woman as she tried to get her bearings and leave. "If you leave, you're nothing but a fool. I know mere curiosity brought you here today, but you could at least listen to me. That wench will hurt you. I can tell you her name. She needs to be stopped or she'll hurt your family. Come back in 3 months. Bring something that belongs to your husband. Also, do not pray. The boy can't hear them if you pray." By then, she decided she had had enough, so she just upped and left. She joined her friends and the 3 of them went home. On the road back, she asked them about their own encounters. One of them said, "He told me that my son will marry that woman of his and that if I try to stop it, I will bring upon his undoing." "Nonsense, I shall never let him marry that woman." The other said, "He told me how I would die and nothing more." Eventually they all dismissed the whole thing as bullshit and went on with their lives. None ever returned to the old man. Time passed, years went by. The woman succeeded in preventing her son from marrying that woman. Unfortunately, her son left their home and died in a freak accident. I do not know what happened to the 3rd woman, but my friend's grandmother on the other hand. Her husband began missing more and more from home. He began to suffer a series of heart attacks. Eventually, he had a stroke and became paralyzed in most of his body. Could barely talk anymore and was bedridden. He died after an agonizing period of a few months from another stroke. That's all. Friend was devastated and never really got over it. Her grandma is still wondering whether she has done the right thing in not following up with the old man.
Romanian here. This one happened about 13 or 14 years ago. Uncle and aunt visiting my grandma in a village, not an isolated village. Grandma is feeling ill, so uncle decides to take her to town to a doctor. She was quite old, and that was when she was diagnosed with cancer that night. Aunt stays there to wait for them. She goes to sleep. Wakes up to my mother calling her outside to open the gate so we can park the car in the yard. Aunt gets dressed to go out. Just as she touches the door knob to open the door, the crucifix that was above the door fell on her hand. After she put it back, my aunt remembered that it couldn't have been my family calling her because we were in Bucharest for the weekend. Just to make sure, she called my mom on her cell phone and was shocked that we really were in Bucharest. The calling continued for 20 to 30 more minutes until it stopped. Moving forward 2 hours, 4 a.m., same thing happened to some neighbors down the street. Guy walks out to check what's happening. Doesn't come back. Found dead at the front entrance, died of a heart attack. Wife told the story with the calling.
This story is from Croatia, a village of Krasica near Rijeka. My grandfather was picking firewood for his family. This was during the fascist era, so there was prohibition of movement after dark. Partisans blew up Italian officers at a village next door. He was stuck far from home after dark, so he snuck in the woods away from Italian night marching routes. It's a natural-looking amphitheater with the woods around the clearing at one side and the great old stone walls people used for farming that go for 10 meters up. He decided to not light a fire as he would be seen and shot by Italians. He huddled in one of the many holes in the small clearing. The holes are where people buried animals some times ago during famine, and after the bodies decomposed, the earth looked as if a great cannonball ran over a spot. A smooth hole of about 2 meters width. A fog, custom for autumn next to Rijeka, descended, and I remember noticing his eyes grew cold, and sometime during the story his perpetual cheery old man's smile was gone. He told me there she was, the unhurried bride, and she asked me to make her soul straight and pay for her place in heaven. So my granddad worked hard to pay for an unknown woman's mass. After that he heard her speak in his dream. She said he and his were always welcome to the clearing in the woods. This was told to me on the summer 6 years ago by my granddad. We still go camping there. My granddad died recently, so I had the urge to pass his story along. Rest well, Branimir. Zimljatai Laka. This is the Anon with the granddad story. I feel like sharing my weird childhood stories and lore of my village is a good thing, so I will carry on. I won't be talking about my house since it's still hard to talk about at 23.30 at night. What things I saw there haunt me still, and if I give away inside me with fear, they will get back to me. This is about something old remember and new generations don't bother to. It's a story about Laka Kapita, or gentle Hooves translated. In the village of Krasica there is a valley. There is a hole with no end. This was proved wrong, however, that didn't stop people throwing other people there when they wanted to punish them. Now there is a rugby and football stadium, the kind where you kick the ball, in the valley and the hill around. Many sheep herders lived there, as they still do. There was plenty of grass there. So over the years it was a place where people saw weird stuff. What I know is a local lore. This is not connected to shepherdess finding pixie braided horses. Other Balkans might know this is about the devil horse. The myth starts with a knight and a lonely sheep herder looking for his lost flock. He descends down the valley and follows the ring of his lost sheep and her bell. Down in the valley he sees sparks flying. They spun through the valley, and he was afraid that somebody was burning the valley. He screamed and called the people of the valley. They gathered and went to see who this mischievous bastard was. They followed the rattle of iron and sparks. Somebody was hitting the ground with a piece of heated iron, or so it looked in the dark. They soon lost the mysterious character due to the moon getting covered in clouds. Tomorrow they decided to keep watching all of them. In the morning there were no singers on the grassland. The next night it returned. The same, fast and silent, besides the gentle rattle of iron. This time a sheep was found burned. The story gets confusing as many tell their own tale, but the end is the same.
Krasica Anon. This one is about the village too. My village is easily located on Google Maps. It's next to Rijeka, between a village of Skoljevo and the further Reljan. It's surrounded by a few hills, and on one of them, one closest to city of Bakar, is a top. The hill is named Konjic, or Little Horse. To the locals it's known for a World War II Germany Stuka crash, as a great place to get tea, herbs and disappearances. On the top is a small pond. It's in a location you can see all of the hill clearings and the village. There a young couple was lost. The story goes like this. A father of one young girl from Jaloka, part of the village closest to the hill, followed her as he knew she was meeting a boy behind his back. This was back when a father paid the future husband for taking his daughter. He followed them to the hill so he could stop them. They had an oil lamp and he was without light as he tried to catch them by surprise. They climbed to the pond and there the father sat and waited. His daughter was gone by the time he was there. He only saw the boy being swiftly taken to the small pond about a meter deep with what he described as a stalk of a sticky flower that did not allow him a scream. He recuperated and jumped after him only to find a sunken oil lamp his daughter took that night and that the pond was shallow as always. He returned home and was tried for the murder of both. His story comes from his last note to his wife.
I've had what you could call a paranormal experience a few years ago and I just can't stop thinking about it, especially lately when I have all the time in the world to think. I was walking home at around 2 a.m. I wasn't drunk or high, had some drinks but not too much and it's been hours, and went through a 2-mile stretch of the road between an unkempt thicket and the city graveyard. I don't have any mental illnesses, and I live in the Balkans if that matters. I was also always deeply atheistic. Around halfway through the road I felt, for the first time in my life, utter and inexplicable dread. I'm not paranoid, but that night just felt different. That thicket a few feet to my left suddenly felt like the most dangerous place in the world. I've never had a panic attack, but from what I've heard others describe it was a lot like that, just without any clear cause. And then, the thing I can't stop thinking about happened. I was listening to music with earphones like usual, and I got really obsessed and picky over my songs, so the playlist only had about 200 of my intimately known favorites. I know what's in this playlist, and it was offline on my SD card without a random Spotify, YouTube playlist. So I know for a fact that I didn't have any song that had a part where it suddenly switches to an old Slavic woman choir reciting Hail Mary. As soon as I realized what I'm hearing, I ripped off my earphones and sprinted the rest of the way home. Nothing came of the dread. I checked my playlist again the next day and the Hail Mary part was nowhere to be found, and I never had any explanation or closure from that night. Never had any other paranormal experiences either. What do you think happened, X? I haven't talked to anyone about it, but with my sanity slowly deteriorating during the lockdown, I think about that night more and more. Do you think it's even paranormal, or is there a mundane explanation?
I need some anons well versed on Slavic mythology, curses or birds, to provide answers for this anomaly. This supposed curse, so to speak, it occurs in a South Slavic village in the Balkans. It is really strange, so I would appreciate any information about it. Ever since the death of my grandfather, there has been a bird that follows my mother. Nobody can see the bird, not even herself, but everyone can hear it, and the sound is always near her. Family, friends, and bystanders don't matter. The sound is real. The bird doesn't sing, but only screams a sound that resembles the word human in our Slavic language. Sometimes the screams are low enough and you could barely hear them, but sometimes they are quite powerful, and they can be very annoying. The bird doesn't discriminate whether she comes during the winter, fall, or summer doesn't matter. We are normal folks, so we are not very well versed in myths and old legends. My father is convinced that it is just an owl. However, the older folks, especially one old woman, is convinced the bird is a curse. Now she claims she knows what it is, but she refuses to tell. She just says it is ancient and too old to be rid of. She gave us weird institutions to curse the bird when we hear it, such as "Go to hell" or "Be gone from this world, may your eyes be burned down." The old woman is a stable lady, intelligent for her age, so it is out of character to speak such stuff, although she spent her entire life in the area. Now, I myself was skeptical about the supposed anomaly, but I heard the damn thing a few days ago. I don't visit the village often since we live near the city, and the area is quite isolated. The bird is only around the area near the village. My mother claims that this happened after the death of her father, my grandfather. Now I seek information. It doesn't have to be paranormal, just anything about birds. I want to know what I'm dealing with so I won't freak out when I hear it again. Sorry for my English.
Be me. Try to find my roots. Ask grandma and parents for their origins. Mother's side comes from some rural village in the Balkans. We came from farmers. Pretty disappointed, so I asked for some stories. Boring.jpg. Ask if anything weird ever happened. Her mood changes and talks more vaguely. Digging deeper. Starts telling me the usual missing farm animal stories and how they had wolf hunters. Tells me her mother's village had a witch problem. Basically, a lot of people got burned and drowned. Lots of superstitions from there, and her mother always had weird beliefs. They had a village shaman, and many villagers would gather and perform some rituals and go on hunting parties. After months of nagging her to tell me more, one day she broke her vagueness. Told me how her dad was close to shaman and was one of the hunters. How they weren't just hunting wolves but also big tall creatures from whom shamans would protect them from. She never told me how her father died, but all men in my family excluding me and my father died shortly after having kids. My lineage can't be traced further since she apparently burned everything related to her parents and moved somewhere else when she had my grandma.
My parents are from a village called Kapari in Macedonia. I was born in the States, but on occasion I visit the motherland, usually staying in the village of Kapari. I have heard a million superstitions, ghost stories, etc., from my folks and others in Kapari. It's not that I don't believe in these occurrences, it's just that I never witnessed them for myself. In the summer of 1995, while on a 2-month vacation in Kapari, I saw, and I now believe. My grandma has a stable of horses in the barn, next to her house. One morning, the horses were dripping wet, sweating like Patrick Ewing in an overtime game, and the manes on all 3 of the horses were braided into hundreds of braids. It would have taken years to do the braiding, yet it happened overnight. When I asked what had happened, my grandmother and mother responded, as if it weren't that big of a deal, "The Beli Ubai are out." Apparently, the Beli Ubai are lady ghosts whom died over 100 years ago, trampled by horses that the Ottoman Empire soldiers were riding. A few nights later, I was walking home from a pub. Keep in mind, Macedonian villages do not have streetlights, and it is pitch dark at night. Scary enough. I heard a woman whispering in my ear. I quickly turned around and saw a woman, she appeared illuminated, run away quicker than Carl Lewis. I was freaked out and sprinted the rest of the way home. When I told my grandma what had happened, she told me only horses have to be scared. They have never harmed humans. Whatever. Also, if I was to get scared, before leaving to go outdoors at night, I had to chant, "Beli Ubai, Beli Ubai, Beli Ubai." This, as I was told, would keep me from seeing them. Beli Ubai translates to white nice in English. However, it makes no sense. There are so many other ghosts in that village and so many stories to tell. I do not know if this is interesting reading for any of you. I just wanted to share one of my stories. If you want to hear more, just comment. It was a weird summer. Usually only a few people might see an individual ghost. Yet almost the whole village of Kapari is able to see the ghosts that I am talking about. I wonder if it's because no one is scared of them and nobody pays them too much attention. People there don't even talk about it, as if it isn't unusual.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.